No, I just turned it off.
Steve, you know how she turns it on.
You know how she turned it on.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Wait.
I was so afraid that somebody was going to mention Steve and his love for 12-year-olds. Dear Steve, I remember well your baying at the moon when you were told that duty entertainment was no longer approved practice at the college. Thankfully, you moved on to accepting that it is now your duty to entertain. Whether it was welcoming new students as Angus Young lookalike, or in the classroom, or on the air, or giving tours to the museum, your ready smile and infectious enthusiasm always entertained. Occasionally at the risk of being arrested, but always entertaining. Steve, I wish you all the best in your retirement. Take care. And that is signed Jane, as in Jane Harrison, the former dean of Loyalist College in Media Studies. Incidentally, if there's somebody sitting here, and we've already had a few people from, we have one person per radio station, and we know there are others that are here, and if you'd like to say a few words, the mic will be open in just a couple of moments. This has been hinted at. Steve was an announcer at CKWS Kingston, CFNB Fredericton, CJCH in Halifax, production supervisor, music director, and then program supervisor at CJCH, associate program director at CJJD in Hamilton, announcer at 1050 CHUM. Acting.
Genius!
Yeah, sorry. Yes, he's also involved in programming and resources, talent, promotions, production, CHUM Radio from 1979 through 83, the National Talent Coordinator for CHUM Radio, Program Director at CJYO, CHUM Limited, St. John's, Newfoundland, Program Director, Program Manager at CJYO, CKIX-FM, and Program Manager of Q Radio, the network, 1984. Now, Steve has a number of people that he went through this with. He certainly didn't do it alone. His colleague from CHUM, way back in the last century, was guest lectured for Steve and Loyalist over the years. He's a former creative director at CHUM, an award-winning broadcaster, marketing strategist who has given us some of the best lines ever. He recently celebrated his birthday, and it's a long way from Sydney Mines for this gentleman. We were talking just before all this started, and he knows Deanie Petty. And everybody knows that any Paladini is a pal. There it is.
I had no gray hair when I met Steve. Let me just get my thing out here. I'm a writer, so I wrote something.
And you did write Paladini.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, John. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here, and it's a real pleasure to talk about my great friend Steve Bolton. I worked with Steve when he was a DJ at 1050 CHUM, and Kathleen also worked there at that time. And I have to be honest with you, Kathleen did way more work than Steve did. Let me tell you what it was like to be a big-time CHUM DJ in those days, back in the 80s. Steve did not work all day. Nothing. He did nothing all day. He had the whole day off. He had the evenings off, too. And then, when most people were getting home from work, after a hard day at work, settling in to watch Magnum PI, or Dallas, or MASH, Steve was off then too. He was just hanging out and chilling all evening. It wasn't until late at night, around 11 o'clock or so, when all the beer was gone, and they were just down with pizza crusts, Steve would look at his watch and say, about 11 o'clock, well, I think I'll win and listen to some records now. You and I, most people, when we late at night listen to some records, that's called a party. For Steve, that was a job. very well-paying job. And maybe you and I down in the basement listening to records in those days, hanging out, cracking jokes with our friends. At least we'd have once in a while have to walk across the room and change the record. Steve even had somebody to do that for him at the radio station. Playing music, cracking jokes, 99% of all people think of that as chilling out. Steve thought of that as a job. But you say there must have been more to it than that. That can't be all he did. Well, yeah, he had some terribly tough jobs on top of that. Every once in a while, the program director would hand him the keys to the station sports car and say, "Here, Steve, drive the sports car all over Toronto. Try to meet pretty girls and give them free stuff." Tough gig, very hard, and it got harder than that. Sometimes the program director would say, "Here, Steve, are some concert tickets. Go to Maple Leaf Gardens, sit in the front row, see the Eagles. When the concert's all over, I'd like you to go backstage and talk to the Eagles. And please, Steve, would you please promise to tell us all about it?" Tough job. It was so hard that Steve wanted to do something easier. He said, "What can I do that's possibly easier than this?" And that's when he became a professor at a community college. Well, I'm kidding, because right now I am a professor at a community college. But back in those days when I was writing and directing the CHUM morning show, Steve would give me a wake-up call every morning at 3:15. And I made it every morning. Steve never missed a single morning, not even once. And here's the thing about Steve. Most people, when they do a wake-up call, they'll pick up the phone and say, "Hi, it's 3:15, time to get up and hang up." But not Steve. Steve wouldn't hang up until he was absolutely sure I was awake and ready to go to work. And you know how he would do that? He would start telling jokes. He would tell me every joke he had done since midnight and every joke he planned to do before 5 a.m. And only when I started laughing, only when he was sure I was awake enough to get the material, would he let me go and be sure that I was going to get in work. He would tell me what the driving conditions were, he would tell me what the weather was. Because that's the kind of guy Steve was and is. As all of you know, he is absolutely reliable, absolutely committed to the job, no matter what the job is, 100% pro all the time. You think any CHUM DJ was given the responsibility to run CHUM's network of Q radio stations in Newfoundland? Not everybody. The only DJ who was given that responsibility was Steve Bolton. The best ideas that VOCM radio in Newfoundland had in 50 years were the ideas they stole from Steve and his renegade group of radio stations that were competing with VOCM all across Newfoundland. When Steve decided to get out of the day-to-day radio business, that was a loss for us, it was a loss for radio, but it was a real gain for Loyalist. Many times after we were done with the morning show on CHUM FM, Roger Ashby and I would hop in Roger's car and we would come here and we would speak to Steve's class. Would we have done that for anybody? I don't know, but there was never any doubt that we would do it for Steve because he is so respected, so passionate about the job, such a great friend to everybody in radio, people in radio and people who are about to get into radio. The Air Force Museum here is very lucky to have him as a volunteer. When I was thinking what I was going to say today about Steve, I did what most people do, I Googled Steve Bolton. Do you know how many Steve Boltons there are in this world? Plenty, let me tell you. Let me just run down some of the Steve Boltons I came across. There's Steve Bolton, the architect in Glasgow. Steve Bolton, the dentist in Akron, Ohio. Steve Bolton, the artist in Hawaii. Steve Bolton, the insurance adjuster in Chicago. Steve Bolton, the rodeo rider in Montana.
That was him.
But the Steve Bolton we are honoring here today, there's only one of those Steve Boltons anywhere in the whole wide world. The only one whose nickname is Boogie.
Yeah.
That's right, Boogie Bolton. And all the variations of Boogie that his friends have used to greet him over the years. The Boogie Man, his Royal Booginess, the Boogatola of rock and roll. Congratulations, Steve, on the friends you've made and kept, on the students you've inspired and taught, and on the increased volunteer role you're going to have here at the museum, where literally the sky is the limit. I know I speak for all of your CHUM colleagues when I say keep flying high, my friend, and do it as you've always done it, at the speed of sound. The speed of sound. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been a pleasure, an honor to be here, and it's been an honor and pleasure to be here because you were here, Steve. Congratulations on your new life. Thank you very much.
Watching Larry up here is just like me looking over here.